Buenas noches. This roundtable hearing on the Committee on Infrastructure, Economic Development, Simon Sanchez High School, Disability Service, Self-Determination, Historic Preservation, Housing, Public Accountability, and the Guam Build-Up is called to order. The time currently is 5 p.m., Friday, May 18, 2023. Notice requirements in accordance with the Open Government Law and the 37th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. The 5-day notice was given May 11, 2023, and 48-hour notice was given May 16, 2023. And was provided to senators, stakeholders, and local media. In addition to the notice of this hearing was also posted and available on the Guam Legislature's website. Materials for this hearing were shared in the committee drive and are also available for printing upon request. For signing convenience, please scan QR code displayed by the entrance or on our web browser bit.ly/rbq_sign-in. Those present will be allowed to provide written or oral testimony or presentations. Welcome. Unfortunately, I don't have any colleagues with me this evening, so I'll just welcome myself. My name is Quinata. I'm just kidding. Rules of conduct. Just before we start, I would like to announce the rules of conduct. I'd like to first provide some general rules of conduct for those in attendance. The conduct of this hearing must be as follows. Shall be as follows. Individuals speaking shall only use respectful and professional language and conduct. Personal interference about the character or motive of any senator or any individual is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from the hearing or subcommittee of any person who is not a member of Liestra and KÅHAT and who fails to observe proper decorum according to the 37th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. All must abide by these rules and conduct or quality assurance standards. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. The purpose of this roundtable hearing is to receive and discuss the proposed changes to Bill number 94-37 Core. Before we begin, I would like to welcome you here today and ask for those representatives to introduce themselves, and then after your introduction, you can go ahead and provide your presentation. So with me this afternoon, or this evening, we have Mr. Cedric Cruz. You can go ahead and proceed. And Mr. Elmer Prudenti. Okay, so just the public hearing on Bill 94-37 was conducted on April 26th, and there were suggestions and recommendations. We will go ahead and proceed with the discussions on the proposed changes after we have the presentation from TRMA. Okay. So at this time, I will allow for presentations and the discussion on the design of the school. Okay. Just turn on your mic.
There. Thank you, Senator. Okay, are we able to pull up the presentation? Okay, there we go. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present the Simon Sanchez High School design. My name is Cedric Cruz from Taniguchi Ruth Makio Architects. I'm the project architect for the A&E team. And so if we go to the next slide, please. So we'll start off, I'll give you a brief overview of the design and show you some images of what the new school will look like from the exterior and also on the interior. And so first we'll start off with the overall layout of the campus. So the project will proceed in construction in 2 phases. So we'll have phase 1, which is the construction of the new campus on the southern portion of the existing Simon Sanchez High School campus. So if you look in the image that's on the current slide, we have the existing Simon Sanchez High School on the north portion of the property, kind of towards the top of the image. To the left, we have FB Leon Guerrero Middle School. And then our new campus will be constructed on that southern portion where we have open fields on the current existing Simon Sanchez High School property. What I'd like to know is there was also a snail habitat a tree snail habitat that was discovered. And so that's located on that lower left corner of the new campus. And essentially our campus avoids the snail habitat. So we have constructed the, thank you. We have constructed the, we've adjusted the building layout so that we avoid the snail habitat altogether, so we're not touching it, and we're leaving it in place. But part of what we intend to do is with the development of our ponding basin, we'd create a new habitat. So if you look off to the left of that image, of the slide, we have our new ponding basin for all the stormwater from the new campus and some of the stormwater from the FB Leonguero campus. And so around that, we would also establish new habitat so that we can relocate a portion of the existing snail habitat. So there's a slightly faded, if we look at that, the existing snail habitat, there's a slightly faded portion of green there. That's the part of the habitat that we intend to relocate to the ponding basin. And then next slide, please. So here's an enlarged view of the site plan layout. So you see we have on the east side of this image, on the right side of the image is Juan Jacinto Drive, and we'd enter off of Juan Jacinto Drive into the campus. So we have our gymnasium, our main office, and the auditorium located on that east side of the campus. So you have direct access from parking, and basically these, the gymnasium and the auditorium are located such that they can be used after hours, and the users of those facilities don't necessarily have to go through the whole campus to use those spaces. The whole campus, the buildings are organized around a main courtyard space. So that's a critical function for the school. During breaks and during lunch, students aren't allowed to stay inside the classroom buildings, and so they need a space during those hours of the day. And so the courtyard space is really important for that function. It's also important for the after-school functions that the school intends to have, such as their Shark Week activity and their graduation. They intend to have their graduations in that courtyard space. Okay, so on the north side and the south side of the courtyard, we have our A-wing and B-wing classrooms. And then to the left of the courtyard, we have our C-wing classrooms, the cafeteria, and the JROTC spaces. Next slide, please. And so this slide is showing the phase 2 work. So in phase 2, we demolish, once the new facility has been completed and the school has moved into the new facility, we then proceed with demolishing the old facility, the old campus, and then constructing the new sports fields. So on the north side, we would have our football field and track. To the left of that, we'd have a practice field. And then that orange box to the left of it will be our tennis courts. We have 4 tennis courts planned. Then to the far left, on the south of FB Leonguero School, we have the shared multi-use field, which would function for softball, baseball, and then soccer as well. Also included in the plan was the credit recovery building. So these are for the night school classes, and that's located on the north side of the campus, next to the track and field. And so that's a separate, building will operate separately from the school itself. Next slide, please. And then so now I'll kind of take you through the campus through different still shots. And so here we have our main gate entrance into the campus. So we're coming off of Juan Jacinto Drive, and vehicles, student and staff and car drop-off vehicles will enter through this gate on the north side of the campus. And then so we have to the right, we have our football field. There's a press box. And then we have our gymnasium. It's kind of the first building you would see as you enter into the campus. Next slide, please. And then here we're kind of moving south along Juan Jacinto Drive. And so here we're at would be the main entrance into the campus. So we have the gymnasium on the right side. On the left, we have the main office. And then we have in the middle our Simon Sanchez statue and our main entrance into the main courtyard and the campus itself. What I'd like to point out is on the fence along Juan Jacinto Drive, we used the opportunity to provide murals. So it's not just a regular chain link fence. It's intended to satisfy the art requirement for the new structure, and also to provide just a nicer entrance for the school, and also something to provide art for the neighborhood to appreciate as they're driving by the campus. Next slide, please. Okay, and so here we are on the southeast corner of the campus. We're still along on the one, looking at this from Juan Jacinto Drive, and we have the auditorium space. So this auditorium space is designed so that it's considered a special scope item. So it's not critical to the function of the existing, of the campus. And if should the bids allow, should the bids come in within budget and we have enough room to add this auditorium, we could do so. It's designed so that it can be taken out of the design with minimal effect to the overall school design. So next slide, please. And so this slide shows you what that looks like without the auditorium in place. And then we see the A-wing classrooms in the distance. Okay, next slide. And then here we just see we have the bus gate on the south end. And so for people who are concerned about the separation of the bus traffic and the car traffic, we've addressed that through creating the bus gate. It's basically the first gate that you would encounter as you're heading north on Juan Jacinto Drive. And so the idea is that we would be widening Juan Jacinto Drive to provide a turning lane into the new campus. And in addition to that, we're providing a turnoff for the buses sooner along Juan Jacinto Drive before you would get to the roundabout that takes you to FB Leon Guerrero School. And then so from this bus gate, the buses would proceed around the south and west ends of the campus to the north side of the campus where our bus drop-off will be located. Next slide, please. And this is a view of our A-wing classroom. So I believe there's definitely concern about windows in the classrooms, and so I'd like to reassure everyone that there are plenty of windows for the students in their classroom spaces. And so you might not be able to see it quite clearly in this image because of the paint scheme might be obscuring it a little bit, but you'll see in other images that there are plenty of windows for the classroom facilities. Next slide, please. And here we're turning the corner of the A-wing classrooms, and we have we see the one edge of the courtyard space between the C-wing classrooms and the A-wing classrooms. Next slide, please. And this is just a perspective of the C-wing classroom. So in the C-wing classrooms, we have regular classroom spaces, and then we have about 13, we have classroom spaces, and then our GCC programs are also located in the C-wing. So you'll notice that we have a larger volume on the left side of this slide, and that's for our shop spaces. Next slide, please. And here we have a view of that looking east, and you see where the snail habitat's located in relation to the west side of the campus. And you'll see our shop spaces, the road access to the shop spaces here in the slide. Next slide, please. This is just another view, and so here we see we're turning the corner, and the buses would continue around this edge of the campus, and then turn east, I guess upwards on this image, and then to the left will be additional staff and student parking. Further beyond that are our sports fields, and then next slide, please. We'll be arriving at we'll arrive at the back side of the cafeteria, and then the JROTC spaces, and then beyond that are our B-wing classrooms, and then our bus drop-off. Next slide, please. And here we just see the JROTC building spaces. So that large volume you see in the foreground is what's known as the firing range, but it's really a marksmanship facility. So that would be for air guns and archery. And so the space is really a large space that's not much different than a classroom space. So I would call it, in terms of its character, something that would be considered a multi-purpose space more than anything. And then next slide, please. And then here we have the B-wing classrooms and our bus drop-off. So we have a canopy that where the students are dropped off from the buses. They exit the buses, proceed down that canopy along B-wing, and then into the courtyard between B-wing and the gymnasium to the left. Next slide, please. And then this is just we're back at at the main entrance, and we see the gymnasium here. Okay, next slide, please. And so these are just views of what from eye level when you're entering the campus. So here, we're at the main entrance. We're looking towards the auditorium, and then to our right is the main office space. And so the idea is that we have this, the program, the library, the band classroom, the choir classroom, the dance classroom. These are located on the second floor of the main office, and these they're overhanging on the first floor level, so they create a covered walkway towards the entrance of the auditorium. And then to the right is where we'd have our controlled entrance into the main office. Next slide, please. So here we're moving further into that towards the entrance, and to our right we'll have our main decorative gate that would be open during when the school's having their main festivities, or during the drop-off hours during the school day. Then when the school session starts, the gate on the right will be closed, along with and we also have electronic access control on exit doors that are also located within this area, so that we create one central controlled entry point into the campus through the main office, which are the doors that you see here. Next slide, please. And then here we've entered into the campus. We're under the main entrance pavilion. Here are we have stairs that take you up to the second level balcony that take you to the second floor classroom spaces. We have our school motto signage located here to greet people entering into the campus. Next slide, please. And here we're looking, we're on the north side of the courtyard, and we're looking south. To our left is the main office, and so in that wall we have the entrance into the main office from the courtyard. Additionally, we have windows from the the principal's office and the vice principal's offices looking towards the courtyard, so that they have a view of what's happening in the courtyard space and they can provide monitoring. Next slide, please. Then we're still on we're moving along the north covered walkway looking south, and we get a view of the A-wing classrooms in the distance. So it's a two-story. The buildings are two-story structures. Are A-wing and B-wing. The A-wing and B-wing classrooms, and then the main office building. So those are the three buildings that are two-story structures. The other structures are all one-story. Next slide, please. And then this is just another view of it's a little bit hard to see, but we're kind of behind the stage on the north side of the courtyard. Next slide, please. And here we're on the west end of the courtyard at the covered walkway, which also functions to provide seating for the students. And then in this particular area to the right, we have the student store located off of there. So. And then from this area, you'd also be proceeding to the cafeteria. So next slide, please. This is a view. We're on the north side we're on the south side of the courtyard. We're looking back north towards the main entrance. We have the main office on the right side, and then we have the B-wing classrooms to our left, and the gymnasium kind of in the middle, beyond the trees. Next slide, please. And then here we have a view of the stage platform. From the south covered walkway. Next slide, please. And then this is just a view of what one of the covered walkways would look like. One thing I'd like to point out in this image is that a key element of the design is that we had to ensure that the restroom facilities for the students were available during the break and lunch hours, because they can't use the restroom facilities inside the school. So those have been provided, and you can see those off on the right side, on the left side of the covered walkway. We have our entrance into the main, into the A-wing classroom building to the left as well. Next slide, please. And then this is we're looking this is what the principal offices would see like as they're looking into the courtyard space. So we're on that east edge of the covered walkway along the courtyard, and we're looking west. Next slide, please. And so here we're kind of we're still on the same side of the courtyard looking into the courtyard space. And this is what you would see as you're coming into the courtyard space from that main entrance space where we have our school mission statement signage and the stairs. Okay, next slide, please. And then these are just images of what the interior will look like. So here on the top right, we have our band classroom space. Bottom right is our dance classroom. Top left is our auditorium space. Bottom left is our choir space. Next slide, please. So here we have images of our cafeteria on the top. So the top two images are of the cafeteria. The bottom two images are of the gymnasium space. Next slide, please. And then these are images of the classroom spaces. So we have a typical classroom, or typical classrooms shown on the top two images. The bottom two images show the science classrooms. Next slide, please. And then these are images showing on the top left, we have our JROTC classroom. So this is we have 3 classrooms that are separated by operable walls, so they can be opened up into one larger classroom space when necessary. And then the remaining 3 images show the corridors within each of the classroom buildings. So we basically have a single corridor that feeds on the interior of the building that feeds that leads to each of the classrooms. So all the classrooms are on each side of that corridor. Next slide, please. And then these are images of what on the top left, we have our conference room for the main office. The top right, we have our library space. And then the bottom left, we have our typical office space. Okay, and next slide. And so that's the last slide. So that will be all for the visual presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Cedric. Okay. With that being said, I think we'll proceed back into the legislation. I did have physical copies. If anyone wanted to follow along, you can approach the table now. I know Mr. Ada proffered some amendments. Mr. Sablan from the Mayor's Council as well. Ms. Masanayan, principal of Simon Sanchez High School. Speaker Wanpat from DOE. I believe Mr. Phil Tovis is here, so maybe he can chime in if needed. The Director of Land Management, Joe Borja. Yeah, so those amendments or requests were added in the first page in the fiscal copies that are available if anybody would like to track. We're just going to go through them, and I'll go ahead and notion whether or not I believe they've been answered in the bill. But thank you again, Mr. Cedric, for your presentation. You can okay. So I know Mr. Ada did point out that he recommended that we insist on windows. I believe TRMA, you've satisfied that with the blueprint and the renderings from the F&E. Handicap accessibility has also been made available as it's an ADA compliant building. I believe the security measures have also been already addressed. I think if the building is constructed, then we would ask, I guess, for more security measures to be in place. But at this time, the physical structure is not there. So I think Mr. Adat's concerns have been satisfied. Mr. Sablan, on page 15, contract, while I'm not or a bureaucratic type of project is there. Education at point out this. Yeah, he just stressed on the importance of the school being constructed immediately. Section 58D 104 under procurement evaluation. On page 13, item number 3, Principal Masanayan, section 58-104 under procurement evaluation committee should be comprised of the superintendent, director of public works, and director of land management and administrator GIDA, or their respective deputy director or administrator. It is my hope that the school's community be provided. I think those have also been satisfied. On item 4, this Speaker Wampat from DOE regarding 58-104A. 45 days does not seem like enough time to issue a formal solicitation, especially since responsibility of the solicitation is now with another agency. So she's asked that we've strike out on page 14 and recommended that we strike out request for proposal and be placed with solicitation. On item 6, page 14, considering the makeup of the evaluation committee, you have the Director of Public Works or Deputy Director. Both of those are unclassified positions and subject to change at any time. I suggest that you include building permits administrator in there, which it is classified, where it is a position that is classified so that you have some sort of continuity throughout the project, which is true. That's from Director of Land Management, Mr. Borja. He also requested that unclassified positions are subject to change, and that the slot for land management should also include a Guam's chief planner, which I also have arranged to be amended. He said, Director of Land Management also, the sign is 90% complete. We are careful with those plans that are still not outdated. TRMA, I believe you stated that the plans are up to date or correct? They're not outdated? Okay, thank you. I just believe they were just this year, right? They were just approved this year? 2020, okay. Thank you. Speaker Wampat brought back up 58D105 on responsibilities, item 9 of the contractor, page 14 to 15 should include reference to demolition of the existing facility by contractor. On item 10, this is from Mr. Sablan. This section shall reissue the request on, page 14, this section shall reissue request for proposal and RFP in 4 different areas. Does not mean there can be 4 different offers and possibly 4 different contractors based on what area contractor submits. A proposal on this section also mentions that the school design, I understand the design is 100% complete, but has it been accepted by GDOE? Mr. Tovis, would you like to answer that? If given that the plan is already 100% complete, would you accept? Do you think the speaker accepts this design and plan? Or Ms. Gutierrez, would you like to comment on that? Mr. Sablan, the point was brought up that the plan is 100% complete, but has GDOE accepted the plan? I believe Simon Sanchez did accept the plan. Am I correct, TRMA? Yeah. So Mr. Tovis and Ms. Maria, I guess the plan has been accepted by DOE. It's 100% completed.
I guess management, because it hasn't come to the board for acceptance.
Okay.
At least, I don't know, but we have not had this on the board meeting agenda where the 100% and do the board endorse it, concur with it. That is, so it's DOE management, that what they call operational.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Okay, noted. On item 11, page 14, this section probably answers my question about how many contractors will be awarded for this section. It makes it clear that only one contractor who will be responsible for all costs and expenses and fees of any kind nature, inclusive of construction permits, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, services, maintenance, and insurance, if in the case of the need of contractor that is well-rounded, financially stable, experienced, and knowledgeable in the construction and furniture of fixtures. I believe that is also addressed in the design FNE, correct, Mr. Cedric? I think you should just sit up here, sir. So as I might be bouncing back to you quite often. Because a lot of these, I think you've already addressed in the plan.
Yes, yes, Senator.
I'm not too sure what it's called in the beginning of where you give out descriptions. Those have been already addressed, I think, in the plans. It's just a matter of bidding. Speaker Wampat also went back to section 58D105 on page 13. Item 13, page 15, section 58-D105, responsibilities of contractor on page 15, line 9. GDOE recommends insertion of furniture and equipment so that it reads in relevant part, and I quote, furniture and equipment maintenance costs shall be paid by GDOE. So I will also review that part and go back onto it and clarify. Consider on page 13, item 13 again, page 15, considered amendment to the section 58D 106 on contractual safeguards on page 15. The contract should include obligations typically found in the Government of Guam construction contracts, including but not limited to the following warranties: liquidated damages, performance and payment bonds, indemnity insurance, standard specifications, technical specification, progress schedule, maintenance compliance with Guam labor regulations and prevailing wage rates, for employment of temporary alien workers on Guam, and the compliance with Public Law 29-98, restriction against contractors employing convicted sex offenders to work at Government of Guam. And that's, again, Speaker Wampat. We have another request for Mr. Sablan on page 16, item 14. Section 58D, D109, lease back payments under the lease payable from lawfully available monies in the current Chapter 58D, Title 5, GCA, Section 58D, 106F, states that the lease back agreement shall include a provision that no rental payments, reserve advance, or deposit payments shall be paid by the Government of Guam to the successful contractor unless the entire education facility has received a full occupancy permit and the education agency accepts the project. Does not make sense. On that one, I think we've already amended on our end. We've made the change. So on another one from Speaker Wampat, on item 15, page 17, regarding section 58D, 110 on utilities and routine maintenance and repair of GDOE, believes that this section should be amended to have the contractor responsible for connection of utilities, the agency, but DOE is responsible for paying the monthly utility services unless the intent of the contractor is to pay utility services and bill DOE and the government GDOE, or the government of GDOE requests this be clarified and identified within this bill. Lastly, regarding additional funding, the federal funding for this project will only be available until through September 30, 2024. And it would take 3 years to construct this whole facility. The government will need to approximately $6 million for the remaining construction portion of this project, and a CM, which is construction manager. So we only will be able to do $1 or $2 million once again. Okay, that one she's talking to the construction management. I believe from DOE, you guys only had $2 million allocated for the project, correct? Okay. Okay. We'll go through that, I think, in a fiscal year. Every fiscal year we'd have to appropriate moving forward. Principal Mass 9 on page 17, item 16, 1, financing of 2, construction, 3, F&E services for construction and maintenance in section 58D-D110 indicates that the contractor will be responsible for utilities and routine interior maintenance. Please include the term exterior if we're going to itemize the interior in addition to routine interior maintenance items like painting exterior walls every so many years, maintaining and replacing the track due to wear and tear would be a few examples of exterior maintenance. The contractor will say we're not responsible for painting because the law only indicates the interior of next the term upkeep follows the term groundkeeping and landscaping. So upkeep is kind of like a general term. So the question comes up: will this be custodial service also? Will custodial services also be included in the upkeep, or will that be a part of section 58D111 under maintenance fund, where it states that the items not included 58D1110 will be a separate cost paid for. And that is pretty much most of the requested changes and amendments. I think, given your presentation, I think in the the definitions part of your whole blueprint kind of answer most of these issues. I think we just need to figure out which on the utility portion. That's the issue right now. So can anybody answer to that at this time? Mr. Tovis? The utilities being connected by the private developer or whoever gets the bid. Can you approach the table? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Phil Tovis, Facilities Manager, GDOE. The way it read, it made it appear that contractor is responsible for hooking up the utilities and might even go to the extent of paying the monthly bill. But the typical arrangement is the contractor does the hookups, DOE takes care of the monthly consumption rates.
Thank you for that information. Other than that, I think all the other concerns were already in the bill. It's already been itemized, and I think it's already been rectified. Do I have any other further items that need to be addressed since you guys are here? I know that you guys had some time to review the design.
Senator, thank you. And
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry because I think I'm the only board member here that's interested to see Simon Sanchez going forward. But I read the bill, the amended bill, and I am in full support because I really want this to move on. Just last week, I was up in the northern area attending promotional ceremony, and those are the people from JIGU, and they asked me, what is the status? What is the status? Because it's going to be how many more years, especially those parents whose kids are going to FB Leon Guerrero. FB is another issue, nothing from the department about what's going to happen this new school year. They say, I hope that by the time my child goes to high school, that Simon Sanchez is completed. And what is the board doing? This is where we have nothing to do with this. But as a board member and as a community, I was put in this position by the voters, okay, that I have to answer them. We need to move on. We need to move on. This has been taking too long. You were a student when the time. So I don't know what's the whole up. I read the bill, and all the input that was requested at the last hearing was inputted. We need to move on. We cannot procrastinate. We cannot wait for another year. The department have to get their act moving because the clock is ticking. Thank you, Senator. And I support the bill.
Okay, thank you so much, Chairman. I think you've satisfied your requests, right? So you've presented your design and drawing in FF&E. So I think you're good now. Mr. Phil Tovis, do you think we're all good now with the bill?
Yes, sir. Well, with the exception of the CM, that wasn't addressed or
Yes.
hasn't been addressed.
I really don't know how we're gonna address the CM for the whole project.
Yeah.
I will get consultation from the OFB director on that one because we're gonna put that's a lot of money just to, I think we gotta go by fiscal year because that's how we usually allocate. But again, I'm a freshman, but I am trying to rectify the school situation. It's been 10 years. I graduated in 2014, so in no ways is this acceptable to keep this delayed, but I hope that this bill makes it to the floor as soon as possible and that we can carry on with this project and get it at least back. I mean, it built 6 other schools plus JFK, so I think we're on the right track. Once we get this school lease back and we start getting kids back into the school, then that's when our job is accomplished, right? But at this time, we addressed most of the items that were brought up during the public hearing on the bill. So I think we're pretty good with this, and if I don't have any objections or any further concerns to be addressed on my end, I will go ahead and conclude our public hearing for the day. So if there are no further discussions for my committee or myself to review, the committee appreciates your participation in today's roundtable hearing. and recording of today's hearing will be also available online via the Guam Legislature's website. This concludes today's roundtable hearing. It is now 5:39 p.m. This roundtable hearing is adjourned. Take care, Siduos Masi, and thank you and God bless.